I have heard my fair share of stories over 20 years. And the one thing I do hear from the outsiders who aren't part of a program is they don't like meetings, or it makes them feel like they want to drink. It increases the cravings, which is why I kind of made this alternative source of information from someone who understands, and someone where there's no judgment, no expectations. But I do like to share some of these stories I've heard because well, at times they're just humorous. Once, when I was brand new, over 20 years ago, there was a gentleman in the meeting who was older, probably his late 60s, and he was always very smartly dressed. He drove a black Cadillac with tinted windows, and he carried around a cigar, and he put the cigar in his mouth, but it was never lit. He just kind of like chewed on it. And from his accent, I'm thinking he was from the East Coast, maybe New York, maybe New Jersey. But I loved when he would tell his stories. And one of them was that they had picked up a guy who had called and who was desperate to get to rehab. He was shaky. He had lost everything. He was living in a studio apartment only to drink. And he said, I'm ready. I'm ready. Something has to change. Well, what this gentleman proceeded to tell us, and I think he was part of the mob, but no judgment there. What he proceeded to tell us is they picked up the guy, put him in the back seat. He was indeed a mess, maybe 130 pounds, white, shaky, terrified. And they said, because this is back in the old days, back in the 60s, typically they would give someone who was on their way to rehab a drink to calm their nerves, keep them from getting sick, keep them from going into withdrawals of some type. So they turned around, they handed this guy a flask as they were driving in the middle of the night to get him to a rehab center, and said, go ahead, take a shot, it's okay. And as he started to take the shot, he said, do you have a chaser? Do you have some sort of Sprite or something I can chase this with? And I don't know if the story is true or not, but I thought it was pretty funny. He said they pulled over, kicked them out of the car, and said, when you're really ready, give us a call. The reason he told this story is because people have to be so desperate for recovery that they'll do anything. And that if you're still chasing your alcohol with a soda, then you haven't quite hit bottom. Of course, now we have very nice adult getaway centers where people can go and spend thousands of dollars on personal therapists, nature settings, all types of therapy, which is really good in intention. But when you have a progressive and fatal illness, you must be so afraid and so willing to get the help you need that you're way past beyond needing a chaser. Like I said, I don't know if the story was true, but man, I love listening to this guy talk. But there's a lot of us out there, people with this progressive fatal illness, who are still hesitant to go to meetings. And I'm not here to convince you. I don't represent any 12-step group. All I represent is 20 years of experience, hearing stories, and now I'm finally letting people know that it's okay to hope again and to hang on one more day. You know, the quote in the Bible, and I'm Catholic, so I'm not so good at memorizing specific verses, but it's something about leaving the the lampstand lit underneath the basket. And it's about basically when God does something miraculous in your life, you don't hide away. You don't just take a step back and enjoy this new life. You got to go out and look for the other lepers. There was another gentleman years later that said, "Welcome to the largest leper colony on the planet, the island of misfit toys." I can relate with that because that cartoon, that Christmas cartoon, is one of my favorites of all time. I've always felt like a misfit. I always felt like I had one square wheel. But again, the reason why I make these videos is I'm going to try to reach out to as many people who feel like they're left out of the cold. They don't belong in meetings. They desperately don't want to go back to the drink or the drug. And just to have hope, have faith. And if you need to do something with your hands, idle hands is the devil's playground. I think that's the other quotation. You can come into my free drawing community where I share everything I know about neuroplasticity, addiction, recovery, faith, and one of the biggest overlooked aspects of healing is nature. Lord, we need to connect with nature. So get outside, put your face in the sun, ask God for help, ask Him for the next step, and I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.